Today in the United States, political tensions remain a central focus as the country navigates major questions about democracy, executive power, and legislative division in the early stages of President Donald Trump's second term. What we're seeing in Washington reflects deep divisions in Congress, debates over the balance of power, and the broader implications for government functioning and public trust. At the core of the current political landscape is a Congress that is described by many analysts as one of the most polarized in decades. Republican lawmakers have shown extraordinary loyalty to President Trump, with alignment rates in both the House and Senate reaching levels not seen since the 1950s. This level of unity within one party has significantly shaped legislative priorities and decision-making. But that Republican solidarity has also contributed to sharp divisions with Democratic lawmakers. On key issues such as healthcare, immigration, and federal spending, bipartisan cooperation has been rare and difficult to achieve. The effects of this gridlock were visible earlier this year during the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, which lasted 43 days and resulted in nearly 1 million federal workers being furloughed or working without pay. One of the most significant aspects of the current political moment is the use of executive authority by the president. Since taking office for his second term, President Trump has issued hundreds of executive orders, many of which have bypassed traditional legislative channels. Supporters argue this approach allows swift action on priority issues and responsiveness in a fast-changing world. They see it as an assertion of the executive branch's power to govern efficiently. Critics, however, worry that this trend undermines the constitutional balance of power. By sidestepping Congress, they argue, the presidency risks concentrating too much authority in a single office, weakening the role of elected representatives in making and shaping laws. Part of this debate centers on recent disagreements between the executive branch and legislative oversight efforts. Congressional oversight committees have demanded access to documents, testimony, and records related to major decisions from the Trump era. These efforts raise important constitutional questions about executive privilege, transparency, and accountability. They also spotlight how conflicts over government power extend beyond party politics into legal and constitutional territory. Another dimension of the political landscape is public reaction. Polling data and public opinion surveys show the American population remains deeply split. Many supporters of President Trump continue to view him as a leader who prioritizes national strength, challenges entrenched interests, and reflects their values. To this base, aggressive executive action is seen as decisive leadership rather than overreach. Opponents, conversely, see these same actions as destabilizing, eroding democratic norms, and concentrating power in ways that could have long-term consequences for public trust in institutions. This divide is reflected not only in politics but in media coverage and public discourse. Conservative media often frame the president's actions as necessary and justified responses to political opposition. More mainstream and liberal outlets emphasize the need for checks and balances and caution against unchecked executive decisions. The result is a media environment in which Americans are often exposed to different versions of the facts, further reinforcing polarization and public administration beyond internal politics. These questions have real implications for policy outcomes. Issues like healthcare, immigration, federal spending, and foreign policy remain subject to fierce debate. Without clear bipartisan solutions, everyday policies that affect millions of Americans can stall or take on highly partisan tones, influencing things like access to services, public funding, and regulatory priorities. It's also worth noting how these dynamics affect international perceptions. The United States is watched closely by allies and rivals alike, and how the country handles its internal governance speaks to broader questions about global leadership. Actions seen as overly partisan or unilateral can ripple outward, influencing diplomatic relationships, trade negotiations, and global strategic alignment. As the country moves forward, observers are watching whether Congress can assert its role more strongly, whether the executive branch continues to expand its influence, and how public debate evolves in response. What remains clear is that this moment in U.S. politics is shaping conversations about accountability, power, and the nature of democratic governance.